It's 6 a.m. and we are up making coffee and getting ready to leave camp. All night we could hear the lions roaring, and not too far from camp, and so we were really hopeful that if we left early enough, we might have a chance of finding them. And so at exactly 6:03, we were on the road and heading out. With the help of our spotlight, we were searching into the darkness, trying to see if we could spot anything moving about in the dark. I love this time of morning, and it didn't take us long. Almost immediately we found this small herd of buffalo sleeping next to the road. Having a spotlight in these early hours of the morning give you access to some amazing little sightings. There was a little jackal eating something that it had found. We soon found another herd of buffalo, this time a larger herd, at the back of a pan. Clearly a good reason for the lions to be hanging around. We continued our search. We were in the area to which we had heard the calls of the lions all night long. We continued searching, but there wasn't any sign of these lions. Not a track, not a faint track even of these lions, and they had stopped roaring. So we continued scouting around, seeing if we could find them. But while we were looking for lions, there were many other things to see. This jackal, for some reason, decided to run after a warthog for a little while. It was quite amusing. There were about 4 jackals in this little area. So with the sun rising, we decided to scout around the little pan that is at the back of the campsite area. And what a beautiful sighting. Just across at the back of the waterhole from the camp, we found this beautiful pack of 9 wild dogs. They were on the move and clearly hunting. We tried to get our friends on the two-way radio, but they were out of range, unfortunately. But the wild dogs didn't seem like they were going anywhere. They all settled down in the road, and we thought, oh wow, we'll be able to sit here and enjoy our coffee with the wild dogs. However, I think these wild dogs had completely other plans, and it wasn't long before they all started getting up one by one and taking off, clearly still hunting. It was funny that some of the other wild dogs took a while to realize that the hunt was ongoing and were still taking a nap, and had to jump up suddenly to catch up with the rest of the pack. Catching up with the rest of the pack was the name of the game this morning. The wild dogs were hunting, chasing impala among the buffalo at the back of the waterhole, and we battled to keep up with them. And unfortunately, we soon lost them in the middle of the thickets. That's one thing. Not all roads will take you where the action is, and sometimes the action goes beyond the roads. And so after scouting around to see if we could find out where those wild dogs had gone, we had to give up in the end, and we decided to head down into the channel and continue searching for the lions. It's funny, but as we drove around where those wild dogs were, and you will see later, we actually passed very close to where the lions were. And spoiler, we do find them, but not as soon as we would have liked. But in the meantime, we drove down through the channel. The Savuti channel is one of my favorite places to drive, and this is of course coming around Kudu Hill, leading up to Bushman Hill. Sometimes you'll find tracks that require closer investigation, either because they're a little bit different or because the sand is a bit too soft and the tracks aren't standing out clearly. In that case, it wasn't anything exciting. It was just a hyena running along the road. But the pigeons and the other morning birds had walked over the tracks, making it hard to see. In our last video we found some lion tracks around this area, and so we came back this morning to see if there was any other action happening around this area. There was still no sign of any lion tracks, and I always find that interesting that sometimes you can hear lions roaring all night long and not see any tracks or sign of them, but sometimes it's just a case of somebody else driving there first and covering the tracks, and so you just don't see it. This is, of course, was at Marabou Pan, and at Marabou Pan we started to get on the tracks of a lion, and it wasn't long before we found this big old lion. He was a bit old and very tired, and basically spent most of his time doing what lions do, and that is sleeping. This was the only second time on this trip that we bumped into any of the members of the Marsh Pride. This old male lion seems to be patrolling on the very edges of the marsh up towards Jackal Island. It was super cool to see him because over the next couple of days we continued to search for the Marsh Pride, which, as you recall, we saw the Marsh Pride on basically day one of being in Savuti, and then hadn't seen them since. However, the Northern Pride were the ones that we could hear every night roaring, but there was no sign of the Marsh Pride. Here we met up with our friends who had just spotted a leopard. However, the leopard had disappeared into the bushes and we had missed it. We spent a little bit of time with our binoculars trying to spot it in the thickets, but it was in vain and we didn't spot it. We had, of course, sent our friends on to in the direction of that male lion, and unfortunately they didn't find him either. So it was one of those situations where they saw a leopard and we saw a lion, and we tried to swap sightings, but none of us actually found the sighting in the end. Well, we just got back home, got to camp. We didn't stop for coffee today because there was so much going on. As you saw, we found the big daddy lion, and of course the wild dogs this morning, so it was a lot of fun. But now just going to make some coffee and put our feet up a bit because we haven't had a break since we got up this morning at 5:30, and obviously we only got to leave here at 6, but still it's been a long morning so far without a coffee break. Our morning coffee break somehow turned into breakfast, and breakfast was in danger of turning into brunch, and so our friend put on a nice potjie for the evening, and we head off to have a nice shower. This is the ablutions, and at Savuti they are actually really beautiful, fancy showers and toilets. Big mirrors, quite light, hot water. Well, actually, I say there's hot water. There was hot water on day one, and then lukewarm water on the other days. But for a bush campsite, this is 5-star luxury. Got back to camp, and it was time to make our afternoon drink, and I decided to try and make this, we'll call it a cocktail for my wife. This is basically just pineapple juice and 7-Up with white rum. And it's very refreshing, especially on a hot day as it was today. With our drinks made, we set out on our afternoon game drive. Now, I'd spent a lot of time driving up and down the channel, and so on this afternoon drive, my wife instructed me not to drive in the channel, but rather to drive along the top end of the channel, basically on the banks of the channel, looping along and seeing what we could find. It turned out this was a very good call. It's not many days that you find wild dog in the morning, lion, and this handsome leopard. What What a beautiful sighting this turned out to be. I think he had just woken up. He had had a nap all day, probably in the shade of a small tree, and he was waking up, getting ready to start his afternoon hunt. He was stalking a little spur fowl, or a red-necked francolin, a red-billed francolin, that was scratching on the edge of the bank. It's amazing how still they can be. Look how he does that little shuffle with his hind legs, getting ready to pounce. And then the francolin spots him and flies off. What a cool little sighting that was. Here I decided to do a very silly move in hindsight. I decided to let the vehicle roll backwards to try and get a better sighting. In hindsight, I should have just stayed where I was, and the leopard probably would have stayed where he was for a little while longer. However, the leopard was on the hunt, and he soon started off down the road, marking his territory as he went. Clearly on the hunt, he was looping in and out of the channel, up onto the banks, into the channel, onto the bank road. We were having to keep our wits about us to be able to try and keep up with him. We did, however, try and give him space, so to allow him to continue on his hunt. And so we would wait and let him walk down the road before following him. We followed him along the road until he came to the edge and decided to walk into this area of bush.
So we're busy sitting over here waiting because, as you saw, we were following that leopard, and he's turned and we're on a road just back there, which you can see we're by that green dot. Or look, my ugly finger, but we're at that green dot, and he walked in heading in our direction. So we've driven out this way, and we're now waiting for him to see if he will walk across. Not 100% confident that he will, because he did lie down, so he might have just lain down. But he's clearly hunting, so we'll see.
We patiently waited, and then we looped around that little section that he had disappeared into. but with a little herd of impala in there, it was unlikely that he was coming out anytime soon. I feel like in this video we come by this baobab tree quite a lot, but in fact we did spend a lot of time in this area. It is one of my favorite areas, a very good spot for looking for leopard in the afternoons. And this was interesting, to be honest. We looped around this area for quite a while after spending that time with that leopard, and it was interesting. On this particular afternoon we didn't bump into a single other vehicle. And that's really quite unusual in a way. But what I think happened was the northern pride of lions had actually come closer to camp. And as you will see in the next video, is it the next video? Maybe it's not the next video. Maybe it's later. As you will see later, the northern pride has come close to camp. And that, a lot of the vehicles had ended up with the lions. And so you find that sometimes is when there's a really big sighting and everybody's at the sighting, the other half of the park is actually really quiet. However, after snooping around that area where the leopard was, we decided to head over and meet up with our friends for a nice afternoon sundowner. But because we were so far on the other side of the park, it was we would never make it in time for sundowners with our friends. And so fortunately we had sundowner snacks with us and decided to sit down at Rhino Flay and have our own sundowners together. What is the best sundowner snack? For us, is always a good cracker, some kind of cured meat, and of course a little bit of goat's cheese and blue cheese, and of course a caper on top. If you don't have capers, I don't know, what are you doing? Get yourself some capers. They are the best. While we talk about food, some people have left some comments suggesting that they are concerned about our lack of variety with our dinners. Garlic bread and steak day in and day out in the bush is apparently not acceptable. So please, if you've got some good ideas for some practical bush dinners, tried and tested, please leave them in the comments, and we may steal them for our next adventures. Thank you so much, while we're on the topic of comments, for all your comments on our previous videos. It's really nice meeting in a virtual sense. So many of you who basically do the same thing as we do and go out on adventures in the bush and just love being out in nature. I think it's a really beautiful community and it's really cool to be a part of. So thank you so much for that. And basically anytime you like a video or leave a comment, it also really helps us out with the algorithm. So thank you for that. We arrived back at camp. It was very nice because our friends had already got home, and that potjie that they had put on at lunchtime was perfect. I think this is what people mean by having variety with your dinners. This was a very nice change from the usual garlic bread and steak, and so it was really exciting. With the lions roaring all night, we were up early and ready to scuttle out of camp and try and find those lions. As I mentioned earlier, the northern pride had been progressively getting closer and closer to camp, and we were sure that this morning we would find them. We were hoping that we would just pop down across to the waterhole and find them there. As you can see, making good use of our spotlight to make sure we're not missing anything in those early hours. With the sun rising, we continued our hunt for the lions. We knew they were here. We could hear them all night. They were not far. So it was really frustrating driving and looping around Harvey's Pan and not even seeing a single sign of them. Not a single track did we find. And yet, from the calls, we knew they were close. But there was just no sign of them. So we made a thorough search up and down every little road, back and forth, trying to find where these lions were hiding. And I think it's kind of funny because right here we are actually basically driving past the lions. But more of that later. We'll come back to that spot and see the lions and everything in a little bit. But it just shows that sometimes you drive right past things, even when you're actually looking for them. But as you can see, we head out and we started heading in the direction of Kudu Hill, and of course this is here by Bushman Hill. Of course, because we had seen the leopard here yesterday, we wanted to check it out a little bit and see if there's any sign of him coming out of that section of bush. But we continued to make our way towards Rhino Flay, and we found these really clear elephant tracks. And I think this is a good way to open our segment, which way did the elephant go? So here's a little tip. When tracking an elephant, the back foot is oval. So always remember that. Back foot of an elephant is oval. The front foot is round. And as you can see in this picture, the back print is on top of the front foot, which means that the elephant is moving towards the left. Of course, there's other signs. You can see the little scuff marks there that also give an indication of the direction. And that's that. Back to the video. Of course, tracking an elephant is not a difficult thing. I just thought, for some reason, I filmed those elephant tracks. So I said, well, I might as well make a little segment on which way the elephant goes. But yeah, it's always, I love tracks. I love any kind of tracks. And I think I spend more time looking at tracks than looking in the bushes for animals. Here, of course, this beautiful herd of kudu. My wife loves kudu. I love kudu too, and I think it's not surprising that Hemingway called kudu the ghosts, the grey ghosts, because of they're so secretive. Here we got some tracks, and let me know in the comments, what tracks do we have here? Did you get it right? It's a leopard. Always remember the 3 lobes on the back. I'm sure, I don't know why I'm telling you, because I think most of you know this anyway, but if you don't know it, to help you identify leopard and lion tracks and any real cat tracks, they've always got these 3 clear lobes on the heel. That gives you a good indication of whether you're looking at a hyena or a cat. Of course, here we are out in the pans, well, not in the pans, in the marsh. We were really looking for signs of the marsh pride because, as mentioned earlier, we had seen them on the first day. We had seen that one old male lion. But apart from that, the marsh pride had just disappeared. And during the night, we could always hear the northern pride roaring. But the marsh pride seemed very elusive. And so we were putting in some time to try and find them. Here I just came across some tracks, which was a positive sign to see some lion tracks out here near, this is of course near Marabou Pan. We guessed these tracks were the male lion we saw yesterday, and because where we found him yesterday, he was kind of like heading in the direction of Marabou Pan. We decided to stop and have our coffee. The Marabou Pan stretch point is a beautiful place to stop for coffee. It's a really nice picnic spot. Just after our morning coffee, we came across some lion tracks of the marsh pride. And we're really excited about this because, as I mentioned, we hadn't seen them for such a long time. And so we spent a lot of time tracking this pride. Unfortunately, they weren't walking on the road. They were crossing the road, and then we would have to use our Maps.me to drop a pin, and then like make a line of sight to where they're going, drop another pin, drive round to the next road. And these lion tracks, there were a set of two, moved all the way up to Leopard Rock, and then joined the right there by Leopard Rock. It joins the Sand Ridge Road, and this two lines from the Marsh Pride came all the way from the area of Rhino Flay, heading up towards back towards the Sand Ridge Road, but then we lost them there. We came back here because we spoke to some people, and they said, no, the lions, the Northern Pride, they're right here. And so we came and went snooping around once again, basically where we had driven early in the morning, trying to find where these lions were. Everybody was like, well, not everyone, we met like two guides, and they said, no, the Northern Pride is there. And we're like, but we drove there all morning and we didn't see them. And here we are. You'll recognize the spot. We're driving basically right past the lions again. Fortunately, our friends had actually found the lions, and so we got them on the radio, and they went and they agreed to meet us here on the corner so they could show us where these lions were. In the meantime, I helped these safari guys with their high lift jack. High lift jacks seem to cause lots of people a lot of trouble. But yeah, our friends arrived and they took us basically where we had been twice already in the mornings, and there were the lions. As you can see, they are so camouflaged, just lying flat out in the undergrowth. In this section, the road that goes past is very sandy, and I think the problem was I was concentrating too much on the road and not enough on the surroundings. But these lions were so camouflaged, and we're really grateful that our friends managed to spot them and help us find them. But like lions, most of the time, these guys were just sleeping.
We're so close, very close. Just shows that when you focused on driving through this thick sand, you must always pay attention to your surroundings as well. I'm pretty sure I got out right there and put in my diff lock. Like,
we passed them 3 times.
yeah.
Having completely embarrassed ourselves by driving past the lions so many times without spotting them, we head back to camp to make ourselves a good breakfast. It had been a really beautiful morning. It was nice to finally lay eyes on the Northern Pride. So far we had only seen the Marsh Pride, and they had been very secretive. So this was a very special day because now we had both prides of lions spotted. We had found the Northern Pride, we had found the Marsh Pride, and we knew where the Northern Pride was because they were just sleeping under their bush. So after a nice afternoon nap and a lovely shower at these very nice ablutions, we head over back to camp to go out on our afternoon game drive. The plan was basically to go to the lions and wait it out until evening and be able to see them when they finally got up and started doing things. But I think we underestimated how much lions just like to sleep. Because when we finally got to the lions, they were still sleeping and they had no inclination of getting up and doing anything. They were just lying around and basically napping. with the lions so deeply asleep, we decided that we wouldn't spend our afternoon watching lions sleep. Instead, we would go back along the channel and see if we could spot some leopards. I think on this trip I became a little bit obsessed. I think we both became obsessed with finding leopards. We both love leopards, and they're so secretive, and yet they're so awesome when you find them. Of course, there's so many other animals, and it's not just about lions, it's not just about leopards. And I think we maybe don't show that so much in the videos when we stop and look at an impala scratching its ear, or a baboon falling out of a tree. Let me know if you want to see more of that. We generally only show lots of road footage and lots of, oh, there we go, there's some impala walking. But yeah, we do spend a lot of time looking for the cats, and I think that's fine. But I think it's important not to get so focused on finding lions or finding leopard or any other animal that you miss out on the scenery around you at that particular point in time. So we decided to just snoop around the channel area, but as the sun was going down, we had agreed to meet up with our friends in the evening to have a beautiful sundowner.
Push the side over. It's just going to be back round.
Yeah.
You'll probably recognize this is the section that leads up to the main waterhole, and we soon arrived there. And just behind the waterhole, in the same area where we saw the wild dogs, is the beautiful big pan where so many people like to stop and have sundowner. So we decided to have our sundowner there too. But it was actually quite funny because when we got there, so many safari vehicles came, and in the end it was this like long line of vehicles all having sundowners watching the sunset. But it was really beautiful. It was nice to talk to some of the people there, listening to them as they talk about their sightings of the day, and of course have a beautiful sundowner. The nice thing with this sundowner spot is that it's so close to camp, and so we got to watch the sunset in a really beautiful location, and then drive casually back to camp in time for gate close time. But what a beautiful sunset. I mean, Savuti is so special, and it's that pan is really beautiful. Because you can get the sunrise and the sunset both on that pan, and it looks absolutely spectacular. So we had a beautiful sundowner with our friends, and then headed back to camp. Back at camp, there was a few things to do. Cameras needed charging. We needed to get fuel, diesel from the reserve tank into our main tank. The old vehicle actually does very well. On average, we do around 10 kilometers to the liter, which is for an old vehicle like this is very economical actually. Yeah, I'd be interested to know what your vehicles do, and so yeah, leave a comment. Let me know what vehicle you drive and what is the mileage you get. But this brings us to the end of part 3 of our Savuti Diaries, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching. We love your comments. We love reading them, and we love your support. So thank you so much. We concluded our dinner with a little bit of variety. Some lamb chops, beautiful sweet corn, and some garlic bread. I would call that a really good dinner. By the way, look at this clip. Look how dusty the inside of our vehicle gets. I think this is the result of driving an old car like this. Look at that dust. So dusty. But yeah, it's been a beautiful trip, and tomorrow is even more spectacular. So we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!